Today's lesson is 8.7, fraction greater than 1. Our learning target today is I can model and name mixed numbers and fractions. We've spent a lot of time building and naming fractions. So when we see the words 1/2, we know it can be written 1/2. And it can be represented by shading in 1/2 pieces. When we see 2/2, we know that means 2/2. And if we were to draw that, that would be 2/2 colored in, or 2/2 pieces. But what do we do when we get to 3/2? What is that going to look like? Write it on your whiteboards. Three halves can be written 3/2 pieces. What do you notice about this fraction, 3/2? You may have noticed that the numerator is greater than the denominator. If I was going to represent this fraction using a drawing, I would start by splitting my circles into halves. And then I know I have 3/2, so I'm going to color in 1, 2, 3/2. So again, notice my numerator tells me how many halves I shaded in, and my denominator says how those whole circles are split in to pieces. So they're split into 2 pieces each. When I look at the drawing above, I notice something else. I have one whole circle colored in and another half of a circle. So I could also write this fraction as 1 whole and 1/2, or 1/2. What do you notice about these two drawings? You might be noticing that they match. The same amount of space is shaded in. That lets me know that 3/2 and 1/2 mean the same thing. They're equivalent fractions. 1/2 is also known as a mixed number because it contains one whole number and one fraction. Now imagine I split these same 2 circles into fourths, and I had 6/4 that I needed to color in. What would that look like? Do that on your whiteboards now. Pause video. Does your whiteboard look like mine? Notice I colored in 6 out of the 4 pieces. What are some different ways we can name this fraction? Think of all the different ways you can name it right now. Pause video. Many of you wrote fractions like 6/4 or 1 2/4. These are both correct. When I look at it, I have 6 out of my 4 pieces colored in. I also have 1 full circle and 2 out of 4 colored in. That's an example of my mixed number. But there's some more combinations you're forgetting about. You could have also written 3/2 or 1/2. Think back to our previous problem when we divided our circles into halves. 3/2 is the same as 6/4. It's also the same as 1 2/4, or 1/2 pieces. These are all equivalent fractions. They both name the same amount of circles. Try this on your own now. Draw 4 equal-sized circles on your whiteboards. Your job is going to be to think of as many names as possible for 4. I would encourage you to try splitting your circle into different fraction parts. So you might try splitting into halves or fourths or eighths or sixths. Think of how many different ways you can name the number 4. Pause video. These are just a few of the possible fraction names you might have given the number 4. You might have written 4 out of 1. What that's saying is there's 4 whole circles that are only split into 1 piece each. You might have also written 8 halves. What that fraction is telling me is that I have 8 half pieces, or that each circle was split into 2 pieces, coming up to a total of 8 pieces. You might have also written 16/4. What that tells me is that the circles were split into 4 pieces each. And once all of those pieces were colored in, it gave you a total of 16/4. You're going to be turning to page 198 in your math journal. You're going to be building fractions that are greater than 1. Your job will be to read how many pieces or fraction parts you're going to need to color in, and then you're going to actually have to write those fractions. Good luck!